Hey guys, Seth here to help you level up your fandom. Today's video is going to be a little bit different than the usual. It is the introduction video to a new series I'm starting that is going to be a sort of campaign diary following my new Dungeons & Dragons campaign that I will be starting this coming week. So, roll perception to see if you can see it. I'm sorry, I regret that. Hey guys, it looks like you rolled high enough. I can't stop. I'm sorry. Anyways, so this series is going to be kind of following along with my campaign that I'm running, and it's also going to be kind of a new tips and tricks kind of thing. So I want to talk about some of the struggles that I hit as a new DM and how I made it through these, which a lot of times aren't new problems. They're problems that everybody has, but I want to kind of give a fresh perspective about how I faced them and how I solved them as the first time, because this is the first time I'm ever doing this. So I want to kind of talk about how I first solved these problems, as well as go through kind of the storyline and just talk about, you know, what's happening in the campaign. A huge shout out to the legend himself, Mat Colville, who kind of inspired this entire series. He has a series on new DMing tips, and he also does a campaign diary. And if you haven't seen any of his stuff, but you are watching this video, you're doing it wrong. So go head over right up here, check out his series, watch those first, then come back to this. This series is going to be definitely a follow along, kind of, I want to recap everything that happened in the last week, and then kind of pull out some useful tidbits and maybe some tips, or kind of just talk about how I solved an interesting problem or something like that. This is all going to be from a new Dungeon Master perspective, so it's going to be a lot of stumbling, a lot of things that I should have done better. I'll talk about a lot of the stuff that you guys probably know already, and I can definitely pull in tips from you guys if you want to leave a comment down below and let me know, you know, stuff that happened that I should have done better, or things like that. I'm always open to that kind of stuff, but this is going to be a recap series. So all the episodes I'm going to be doing are going to be talking about what I did in the last session, so we can kind of see a hindsight perspective and just kind of talk about how me as a new DM solved these new challenges that I've never faced before. So a little bit of history. I have run a couple of one-off adventures before. I've done probably 3 or 4 sessions, but one-off adventures are great because, you know, there's no real consequences. You can just kind of get your bearings, and if you screw things up or whatever, it's one session and you can start fresh again the next week or whenever you play again. I like starting out that way. I think that it's a good way for new DMs to start and kind of get your bearings and kind of get a decent feel for how things run before you jump into a full-blown campaign. So I would definitely recommend that. As an introduction to this series, it's myself as a new DM, and then I've got 3 player characters who are also new. They have played 1 or 2 one-off adventures with me before this, over the past year or so, but this is the first time they've ever played a real campaign, and this is the first time that they're ever seeing any of these problems or anything like that as well. This past session, we actually started last Monday, so last Monday, all we did was get together and do character creation. We went through the player's handbook. I did a very similar method to Mat Colville. His kind of rolling 46, drop the lowest one, and then so you get 3d6 spread, and you just go straight down the list for your stats. I kind of like that, but I also gave my players a kind of gambling chance where they could roll 1d20, and that was it. So if they decided to roll a d20, then that was the stat that they got. So it could be a 1, but it could also be a 20. It made each choice for each stat very interesting, and I think that they really enjoyed that. I had one of my players roll, 46 for most of his stats, but he rolled a d20 for the intelligence and got an 18, so that's great. So about the campaign, it is set in a somewhat modified version of Mat Colville's Calabris setting that we all kind of participated and created with, including myself, in his Twitch stream over a couple of weekends, a couple months ago or so. He has all of those videos up on YouTube if you want to go and check out that setting, and then you can kind of get a more in-depth feel for my setting as well. Mine is pretty much the same world. I've renamed some stuff. I've changed some backstory. I've changed how things kind of lay out a little bit. But the biggest thing that I did that setting didn't do was for this campaign. For this campaign, I decided that I needed to come up with kind of a 3-tier kind of evil structure. So all the way at the top, the big bad would be like world-ending kind of stuff. So something that is going on all the time in the background of all of these adventures that we have, that is going to lead up, that the players are going to eventually kind of battle. Something that is like god level or huge titan level adversary. And then so that is the baddest of the bad. So I came up with a scenario about that. And then as tier 2, which is something that is really bad, I decided that it would be something that would be really tough, like a dragon or some sort of big demon, someone that serves the big bad, but is still, a good kind of boss fight almost. So a dragon or something of that kind of level would be good for that middle tier, and then underneath that would be just the lowest tier big bad guy. So that'd be something like an evil baron, or maybe a rogue wizard that's terrorizing like a barony or something that is more than just the goblin chieftain in a dungeon, but not so big that it has entire region control. Something kind of in the middle there. So I want the players will kind of have a good ladder system to work up to, and then eventually, as they work through the levels and get higher, they will kind of move into this big bad and start having to deal with that. As far as the characters themselves, I've got 3, as I said before. We've got a half elf, half high elf wizard, who's named Amifrey Brightwood. She is played by my friend Krista. And then we've got a human rogue, pretty standard Lord of the Rings style rogue, named John Stormwind, played by my friend Josh. And then lastly, we have a half drow, half human, so a half elf drow, named Albin Perrick, played by my friend Brian. The 3 of them have very interesting backstories, and I told my players, a week before this first session, to kind of start thinking about what you want class and kind of what type of character you want to play. And they came on Monday ready to go to make this character, but they had an extremely elaborate backstory. So what I did was kind of hear that backstory and tweak a couple of things from them to make it more relevant and apply and fit into my setting. And then after that, we kind of just went through the character creation process and tweaked the backstory, tweaked the race and stuff like that to kind of fit this idea that they had. What was really cool was they all had really easy Dungeons and Dragons type characters. So it wasn't anything like, somebody didn't want to play Thor or anything like that. They all kind of had an idea of what kind of fantasy Dungeons and Dragons would be, so they had that kind of character in mind. So it was extremely great on them. Very helpful for me as a DM to kind of, I didn't have to change a whole lot about who they wanted to play, which was great. It made it really easy to fit their character into my setting, so it was super awesome. Let's meet these characters. I'll start with Amifrey, the half-elf wizard. She is half high elf and then half human. What had happened was her parents came together. So her father was an elf. He fled the fallen Tal Anarfel kingdom, fled into a human city named Havenmore, and then met the mom, had Amifrey as a child, but being this half-elf and elf-human family, they were extremely persecuted in this town. So what happened was when Amifrey was a early teenager, her parents had kind of enough and joined a political movement, rose up, tried to get this equal rights. That movement lost, and her parents died. In the midst of that, the townsfolk thought that Amifrey was very evil, so they drowned her in the nearby lake. Dead, she drowned. Then, as her body kind of washed ashore, she was found by a wizard by the name of Bilkrin, who happens to be a necromancer, and he, did some CPR kind of stuff, brought her back to life, and in doing so, he kind of breathed magic into her. So, in this new life that she has, she kind of fell into this magic use. So now her life's goal is to kind of find this wizard again and have him teach her necromancy or any kind of magic art so that she can fully explore this and become powerful enough to either seek vengeance on the town or prevent this kind of thing from happening to anybody else. Next up, we've got John Stormwind, who had my friend Josh came up with this character. He had the most elaborate backstory that I could have imagined. So I'm gonna very very briefly paraphrase what happened to him because it was a long backstory. Basically, he grew up as an outlander, just him and his father, like in a cabin in the woods, far away from the town, that kind of thing. Very much a hermit kind of family. War broke out, all of this stuff. He kind of did a short military stint. His father died in the cabin, and consequently he kind of went into town for a while, trying to change up his life and all that stuff. Found a girl in a bar. She was a barmaid, and she had another suitor who was a general in that particular army. So John kind of won over this barmaid, and they decided to move back into the woods, into the cabin, to kind of get away from the danger of the city. And in doing so, it really upset that general. So what happened? They moved into the cabin in the woods again, and they lived there for a little while. She got pregnant, and then the general from town came back, found them, went back to town, gathered kind of a small forces, and went back into the cabin. Conflict with John. They kind of got in another fight with some orcs, that kind of stuff. On the way out, brought back to town, John got arrested and thrown in jail. Killed a guard and broke out of jail, fled the town, and made it all the way back to his cabin to find that it had been burnt to a crisp, and his wife and unborn child were dead. So in seeing that, he knew obviously who had done it, so he went on kind of a murderous rampage just outside the town of Falworth, which is up in Ardinia if you want to look on the Calabras map. Just outside of Falworth, he went on this murderous rampage to find the guy who killed his family. He kind of found him outside of a cave, murdered a few of them, all that stuff. They had this huge fight, and he had a wound in his arm, his bow arm. So he couldn't really use his bow effectively anymore. An arrow or a knife actually went right through his arm. So he kind of struggled to kill the last guy, the general, fought him, eventually beat him in a very meaningful way, but that battle left him nearly dead on the outskirts of town. Next up, we've got Albin Peric, which is the half-elf drow. Albin was born in the drow kingdom, was raised just like a normal drow, and then about at the age of 4 or 5, something really young, the nomadic humans from the south of the Brantur steppe came up into the kingdom and were just kind of attacking the drow. There was some serious conflict there, destroyed the city that he lived in. So his parents were killed when he was 4 or 5 in this event, and he kind of fled as a refugee with a bunch of the other drow from the town. They kind of went across the pass into the Dwargar kingdom, which is split in Calabras, and I adopted this as well. In the Dwargar kingdom is split into Ulval and Ulvak, the upper and lower Dwargar kind of dwarven kingdom. So I had made a decision that the Ulval, the upper kingdom, were kind of trying to dispel their Dwargar ways and be less evil, kind of move into the light, out from the underground, just kind of be much more of a peaceful, pacifistic kind of society, try to break this Dwargar hold that they had on themselves. So when he fled into that kingdom, he went into Ulval, which was the peaceful kingdom, and they naturally took him in as a refugee. He lived with a family there who had a child about the same age as him, so he kind of grew up in this Dwargar family. So, I described it as a very elf moment, like Buddy the Elf from the movie Elf, in that it was the society of Dwargar were very accepting and open to him being there, but he very clearly did not belong. He was huge, he was a drow, so he's like super tall, living with a bunch of dwarves. who were trying to be very accepting, but he clearly didn't fit in. So he grew up, went into the military at the persistence of his dwarven friend that he also grew up with. Kind of mucked around for a little bit, and 2/3 of the way through his military training, the Ulvok, the underground society of Dwargar, the real Dwargar, if you can say that, attacked Ulval, and in doing so, killed his best friend. So he now has no real tie to the Dwargar kingdom, and he wants to get out of there. He can't really stand being around where his friend died. He can't really stand being part of a society that he clearly doesn't fit into anymore. So he convinced that military, since he did sign up with the Dwargar military, so he is honor bound to serve them, and he doesn't really have any option to leave. Their military service is for life, no exceptions. So he doesn't have the option to really just leave. So what he did was convince the uppers to let him explore the world, to gather military defense intelligence on how to strengthen their own military defense from other societies around the world, so that he would come back every 6 months or so and report in on what he had learned, so that the Ulval society can better strengthen themselves to prevent more attacks like the one that killed his friend. So he's kind of wandering around the world now. And that is where the backstories left. What I did after that was, in the week after this last week, so just after the session and the following couple of days, I went through and I wanted to come up with an adventure that they could play through that would kind of tell the story of how this group came together and decided to be an adventuring group. So I came up with an adventure, and I broke it down into three goals that I had to accomplish. I needed to, one, tell the story of how they physically came into the same area in the world, because right now they're in very different parts of the world. Two, I had to tell the story of how they started to work together. And then three, I needed to give them a reason to continue to work together moving forward. So that was the goal for my adventure. This adventure is going to be a lot more scripted and almost railroady, just because it does need to tell a specific set of tales. It needs to bring the party together, and because it's the first adventure, because it has a very specific goal to open up the sandbox nature of this campaign, I'm okay with it being a little more railroady than I would normally participate in, because it has very specific goals that it has to accomplish in order to enable the rest of the campaign to play out how they want. So what I had done was come up with a bunch of adventure hooks and reasons that they'd go to various parts of the world, all that stuff, to just accomplish those first three main goals. Next week, after we play through this adventure, I will recap kind of what I did, how it worked out, all that stuff, and we'll go over how this first session played out. So shoot me a like if you like the video, subscribe if you want to see the rest of these campaign diaries as they come out every week, and until next time, guys, I hope all of your rolls are 20s.